Patti Smith, the great rocker, has that great song, people had the power to dream, to rule, to wrestle the world from fools. That's what we're about here. That's our historic challenge, and that's the opportunity that Bernie Sanders is giving to us. So here he is, a true fighter, a true democracy builder, the people's president, Bernie Sanders.
Thank you. This is a great crowd. It is a loud crowd. Let me thank Guy Forsyth, Catherine Guthrie, Amy Nelson, Grupo Fantasma, Millie Toll, Stephanie Bergara, Chao No, Hector Uribe, Dr. Lynn Mitchell, and somebody I have worked with for so many years, and you should be so proud of, one of the great political activists in this country, Jim Hightower. You know, we started this campaign, as Jim mentioned, about 10 months ago. And when we began this campaign, we were at all of 3% in the national polls. We had no name recognition outside of Vermont. We had no money, we had no political organization, and we were running against a candidate who was universally known and who the media had determined was the inevitable candidate of the Democratic Party. Well, a lot has happened in the last time. We were 50 points down in Iowa. We ended up in a virtual tie. We were 30 points down in New Hampshire. We won that state. We were 25 points down a month before the election in Nevada. We came within 5 points. And now we come to Super Tuesday. On Super Tuesday, the state that is going to be voting for the most delegates is the great state of Texas. And if all of you come out to vote and you bring your friends and your neighbors and your co-workers, we are going to win here in Texas. And the reason that our campaign has the kind of momentum we are seeing here today and we're seeing all over this country is that we are listening to the American people, not wealthy campaign contributors. And what the American people are telling us is that they are sick and tired of establishment politics. They're sick and tired of establishment economics. They want a government which is going to represent all of us, not just the 1%. When we go around this country and we listen to the people, we are listening to working people who say, Bernie, I can't make it on $9 or $10 an hour.
Yeah.
I can't make it for myself and I can't make it for my family. And that is why we need to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour over the next 10 years. And when we go around the country, we talk to seniors and we talk to disabled veterans. And what they say is, Bernie, we can't make it on $10,000, $11,000 a year Social Security. Nobody can make it on $10,000, $11,000 a year. Now, Republicans have come up with a brilliant idea that they want to cut Social Security. That is a crazy idea. That is an immoral idea. And I am the only Democratic candidate who is saying, no, we're not going to cut Social Security. We're going to expand Social Security. And by the way, we're not going to continue allowing veterans in this country to sleep out on the street. We're going to make sure that our veterans get the benefits and the health care that they earned. And when I travel throughout this country, we talk to a lot of young people. And what the young people tell me is, Bernie, why does it happen that I am now $50,000, $100,000 in debt for simply trying to get a decent education? How many people here have student debt? Unbelievable. This is an epidemic of debt. I want you all to think about this because this is what this campaign is about. It is thinking outside of the box, thinking outside of the status quo. And I want all of you to think, everybody here knows that in America we need the best educated workforce possible in a competitive global economy. Everybody here knows that education and learning is inherent in being a human being. Why are we punishing people for getting the education they want and need? And that is why we have legislation in that will significantly lower student debt in this country. And we, as we go around the country, are listening to women. And what women are saying is, why is it that we are earning 79 cents on the dollar compared to men? And what African American and Latino women are saying, that gap is even greater. Now, you and I know that there is no rational economic reason for women to be earning less than men for doing the same work. That is nothing but just old-fashioned sexism. And I know that every man here today will stand with the women and fight for pay equity. And when we travel the country, we are listening to our African American brothers and sisters. And they are saying, how does it happen that in this country we have more people in jail than any other country on earth, largely African American, Latino, and Native American? They are asking, how does it happen that mothers are afraid to send their kids out on the street and are worried about police violence?
Systemic oppression!
And what we are saying together is that we will fight to end institutional racism. Going to allow the Trumps of the world to divide us up. And that we are going to bring major reforms to a broken, very broken criminal justice system. As I travel around the country, we meet with a lot of Latinos. And what the Latino community is saying is that we work hard, we are tired of living in the shadows, we are tired of living in fear, we want comprehensive immigration reform. A path toward citizenship. And while there are some people in this country who may disagree about how we go forward with immigration reform, I would hope that every American would stand up against the xenophobia and against the racism that we are hearing. It's not acceptable to refer to Mexicans who come into this country as criminals, as rapists, as drug dealers. As a nation, we have come too far in fighting racism and bigotry. We will not allow that language to stand. Now, as Jim Hightower told you, our campaign does things a little bit differently than our opponent's campaign. And this is the major difference, and it's a profound difference. I'm here to tell you that no president, not Bernie Sanders, not anybody else, can do what has to be done for working people in the middle class all by himself. Can't happen. And I'll tell you why. And this is what no other presidential candidate will tell you. It's true, it's a painful truth, but we have to understand it. Right now, the people who control our country, who control our economy, who control our politics, people on Wall Street who have an endless supply of money, and I mean endless. Corporate America, whose greed has helped destroy the American middle class, who would shut down a factory here in Texas and move to China if they can make $5 more in doing it. the wealthy campaign donors who are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to try to buy this election, who have unbelievable power over the legislative direction of Congress, the corporate media, which determines what you see and what you don't see. All of these forces are enormously powerful. No president alone can take them on. What you all know is that American history is about understanding that real change in this country never comes from the top on down. It always comes from the bottom on up. What real change is about 120 years ago, workers who were treated like animals, organized, some of them were beaten, some of them were killed. They demonstrated, they fought back, and they said, you know what, we are human beings. You have got to treat us as workers with dignity. We are going to form unions and have collective bargaining. Organizing from the bottom on up. And the civil rights movement didn't happen from the top on down. It happened when millions of Americans, African Americans and their white allies said, you know what, in this great country, racism and segregation is not acceptable. And many of those heroes, with their names we don't know, people who were beaten, people who were killed, but they stood up and they fought back, and that's how we made change in civil rights in America. 100 years ago, people forget this. 100 years ago, women in America did not even have the right to vote.
No.
Women could not get accepted into various types of schools, could not do the jobs they wanted to do. But women, by the millions, stood up and they fought back. Some of them went on hunger strikes, some of them died, some of them were arrested. And women and their male allies said that in this country, women will not continue to be second-class citizens. And how change comes about is that if we were here just 10 years ago, not a long time from a historical perspective, and somebody jumped up and said, you know, I think in the year 2015, our gay brothers and sisters will have the right to marry. The person next to him would have said, what are you smoking? That's which raises an entirely other issue. But now this is what real change is about. Because of the courage of the gay community and their straight allies, we have changed this country's views about gay marriage. You have a conservative Supreme Court that made gay marriage legal in 50 states. And today, if you go out and you ask some kid who's 15 years of age, what do you think about gay marriage? That kid will shrug his shoulders. It's like, what are you talking about? What's the problem? That is what revolutionary change is about, is when we look out at the status quo and we say, this is not right, this is not working, this has got to change. Now, what this campaign is about, when we talk about change, is an understanding that for a start, we have, and it's important to acknowledge this, a corrupt campaign finance system, which is undermining American democracy. And this is a big deal because the corrupt campaign finance system impacts all of our lives in every way that you can think. Now, one of the differences between Secretary Clinton and myself is she has a super PAC, which is raising many millions of dollars from Wall Street, the drug companies, the fossil fuel industry. Now, every candidate, Democrat, Republican, in the history of the world, every candidate has always said, oh yes, I'm getting millions and millions of dollars from special interests, but they won't influence me. So we have a very simple question. Why are they giving you many millions of dollars? And the other simple question is, if you are going to give a speech to Goldman Sachs or other Wall Street institutions, and if you give that speech behind closed doors, why don't you make those transcripts public? Now, we have chosen to raise our campaign funds, and sadly, it requires a lot of money to run for president. But we have chosen to do it a very different way than Secretary Clinton. We have said, no, we don't represent Wall Street. We don't represent the billionaire class. We don't want their money. We are going to ask working families in the middle class to help us out. And an amazing thing has happened over the last 10 months, something that in a million years I never would have thought would have been possible. And that is, up to this point, we have received over 4 million individual contributions. That is more contributions than any candidate in the history of the United States at this point in the campaign. And the average contribution, and this is what is so enormously gratifying. You know what the average contribution is? This is a smart audience. That's why we're going to win. Now think about it. Think about it. What today's politics is about is candidates going to billionaire mansions and walking out with millions of dollars. We have our average contribution of $27. This is revolutionary. To paraphrase Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg, this is a campaign of the people, by the people, and for the people. Now, another difference. Another difference between Secretary Clinton and myself deals with an issue that is not very sexy. It's one that the media kind of doesn't talk about too much, but it is very important. When we ask ourselves, why is it that for the last 30, 40 years, the middle class of this country has been disappearing? All right, why is it that in Texas and in Vermont, you got people working 2 or 3 jobs trying to cobble together some income? One of the reasons is that since 2001, we have lost some 60,000 factories in America and millions of decent paying jobs.
Bad trade.
And one of the major reasons that we have lost millions of good paying jobs in so many factories is disastrous trade policies. I'm talking about NAFTA, permanent global trade relations with China, and I'm talking about the proposed TPP. I want to tell you a story. I was elected to Congress in the House from Vermont in 1990, and shortly afterwards, I was already walking picket lines in opposition to NAFTA. I knew what NAFTA was about. What NAFTA was telling American workers that they were going to have to compete against people who were making pennies an hour in Mexico and in other countries around the world. Now, everybody here wants to see low-income people in Mexico and countries around the world do better. We're going to fight to make that happen. But you don't have to destroy the American middle class to make that happen. And I went to Mexico in the early 1990s to see what was going on there. And what I saw in an area called the Maquiladora area. I'm in Texas, I should have known that. This is what I saw. Now, this is the early 1990s. What I saw were beautiful new factories from businesses in America and around the world. And then we went, these are state-of-the-art modern factories, and then we went to visit the workers who were working in those factories. I wish I could tell you that we visited them in their homes, but I couldn't, because they didn't have homes. Literally, they were living in cardboard shacks. In those days, they were making, probably it's gone up since, they were making 25 cents an hour.
Wow.
So one of the differences between Secretary Clinton and myself is when she was First Lady and President Clinton pushed this, she supported NAFTA, I opposed NAFTA. She supported permanent normal trade relations with China, which has cost us even more jobs than NAFTA. I have helped lead the opposition to these disastrous trade policies. And what I say today to corporate America, every night on TV in your 30-second ads, you tell us how much you want us to buy your products. If you want us to buy your products, you better start manufacturing those products here in the United States. Let me tell you another difference between Secretary Clinton and myself. And that is that the most important foreign policy decision made in this country in our modern history had to do with Iraq. I listened very closely to what President Bush had to say on Iraq when I was in the House. And I ended up concluding that he was not telling the truth and that invading Iraq would be a disaster. Go to my website, BernieSanders.com, find out what I said before the invasion, what happens the day after you get rid of this dictator, Saddam Hussein, what kind of political vacuum is created. Sadly, and it gives me no pleasure to tell you this, what I predicted would happen was largely right. Secretary Clinton voted for the war in Iraq. So there are very significant differences between us. In 1996, some of you may remember that there was a piece of homophobic legislation called the so-called Defense of Marriage Act. I am proud to tell you that I was one of the relatively few members of the Congress to vote against that homophobic legislation. Secretary Clinton supported that bad piece of legislation. Now, the reason that we are doing so well in this campaign is the American people know that there is something wrong in our country when the top 0.1% now own almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. They know there is something wrong when we see a proliferation of millionaires and billionaires at the same time as we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. So you want a radical idea? We are going to create an economy that works for working families, not just the 1%. We are going to do is take on the greed and the recklessness and the illegal behavior of Wall Street. Wall Street's illegal behavior brought this country into the worst economic downturn since the 1930s. Millions of people lost their jobs, their homes, and their life savings. Today, 3 out of the 4 largest banks are bigger than they were when we bailed them out because they were too big to fail. Together, what we are going to do is break up these banks. And I'll tell you what else we are going to do. We are going to make public colleges and universities in this country tuition free. And we are going to pay for that by a tax on Wall Street speculation. When Wall Street's greed and illegal behavior destroyed this economy, Congress bailed them out. Now it is Wall Street's time to help the working families in this country. And let me tell you something else. And I know that many of the leaders here in Texas, your political leaders, may not agree. They are wrong, I'm right. I sit on the Senate Committee on the Environment and the Senate Committee on Energy. And here's the truth. I have talked to scientists all over this world.